Hi, everybody. Joe Cioffi here. Weather in 5 days in 5 minutes, and coming up tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time, with Ernesto departing and moving to the Northeast. We'll take a look at how it's impacting the weather because it is slowing weather systems down, which is why we're dealing with downpours and thunderstorms and severe weather across parts of the east and south. Hot weather continues across the western Gulf states and the lower Mississippi Valley. And we've got September weather on the way. And we'll all get into all of that tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. So as we check out watches and warnings as of 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time in the east, we've got flash flood watches. We've also had overnight rains with numerous flood advisories and the occasional flash flood warning in parts of New Jersey down into Delaware. There could be some more heavy downpours later today and tonight, and some severe weather as well. Hot weather with heat advisories and excessive heat warnings from Alabama west to Oklahoma and southern Kansas, and also into much of eastern and central Texas, and back east across Louisiana. Weather in the west is mostly quiet. We have a few areas that are still dealing with wildfire issues where we have some air quality issues in parts of south central Oregon and in one county in Idaho. So, overall, most of the attention today is focused in the eastern part of the United States. You can see Ernesto is had weakened overnight into a tropical storm. It might get back to hurricane strength as it moves northeastward and then makes a pass probably for southeastern parts of Newfoundland. It will come close later on Monday. But while it's out here, you'll notice that the upper trough and the cold front associated with that, covering the Great Lakes and much of the eastern United States and extending down the Appalachians, is not really making much eastward progress today. It's got to wait for that hurricane to get out of the way in order for this system to play through. So another. We have the rest of today to deal with this, and also on Monday. But behind that, as we look up into the Dakotas and Minnesota, where skies have at least partially, if not totally, cleared out. There's actually some wildfire smoke issues going on, that milky white you see in parts of Minnesota and in North Dakota. But extending north from there is the beginnings of a very, very dry and cool air mass that's going to be building into the eastern United States beginning Tuesday and lasting pretty much for the rest of this week and possibly even into the beginning of next weekend. So, a warm front moving through overnight. You can see downpours across much of New England now, down to Long Island. Radar as of 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time is quiet in much of upstate New York and through New Jersey, but we're starting to see more spokes rotating around that upper trough and bands of showers that are starting up in western Pennsylvania and western New York, and also down into south central Pennsylvania and a few scattered showers down the Appalachian Mountains. I think they're going to become more numerous later today as these spokes just basically rotate around. The Storm Prediction Center for today has a slight risk of severe weather extending up into northern New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania, down the coast through Virginia and North Carolina, into South Carolina, southern Georgia, and then back westward into Mississippi. The marginal risk extends a little bit further north and east of that to about New York City and western Long Island, the Hudson Valley, west of the Hudson River, back up to the Catskills, and then it swings down through the southern Appalachians. We also have a slight risk zone in northeastern Oklahoma and northwestern Arkansas. It's a narrow area that extends up into eastern Kansas, and a marginal risk from Utah on up into parts of western Wyoming. The thunderstorms in the east, there's a 2% tornado risk indicated from the Hudson Valley down into northeastern Virginia. And for tomorrow, as that front gets closer to the coast, general thunderstorms from Maine to Florida, a marginal risk for severe weather from southern New Jersey down into North Carolina. Also seeing a marginal risk in western Louisiana and East Texas, and from northeastern Colorado northward up into Montana, and then westward back into western Montana. Rainfall amounts. This is another one of those situations where we're talking about convection. So over the next 7 days, and this is definitely front end loaded. It's today and tomorrow in the northeast and mid-Atlantic states. It's 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half, but in some heavier thunderstorms, and especially because these systems are slow, these thunderstorms are going to be slow moving. Rainfall amounts in some localities could wind up being double the general forecast. Also, some heavier precip this week in Florida, and just kind of nipping parts of the southeast coast and the Gulf Coast. We've got showers and some scattered thunderstorms to deal with in the Rockies and in the Southwest. So it could be anywhere from a few hundredths to as much as half to 3/4 of an inch there, and also a little bit of precip up in the Pacific Northwest. Flash flood risks today. The Hudson Valley, Western Connecticut, Long Island, New Jersey, New York City, much of the eastern half of Pennsylvania to Delaware, central and eastern Maryland, into Northeast Virginia, all under a slight risk. That's a 15 to 40% chance that there could be some flash flooding, some localized flash flooding. And as we move on to tomorrow, we're still going to hold on to that marginal risk from Maine to Eastern Virginia until the cold front passes offshore. And the highlight for the week is the dew point map, the loop of the dew points, which we don't look at too often. So of course we had some drier conditions last week. We've given way to the heat and humidity with this tropical air along the eastern seaboard, and dew points up in the upper 60s and low 70s today and into tomorrow. But then once that cold front passes, and I'll just widen this out so we can see how far south this dry air gets. We're talking about dew points by Tuesday morning in the 50s and even the 40s in upstate New York and New England, western Pennsylvania through Ohio, Indiana, back up to the northern lakes. I even see some 30 dew points up in Wisconsin. This is a pretty impressive dry, cool air mass from Canada for this time of year. And those low dew points by Tuesday morning make it down into western North Carolina, southwestern South Carolina, northern Georgia, northern Alabama, and Mississippi, and into Arkansas. So a little bit of a break in the heat wave in those areas from Alabama westward. And the dry dew points are going to be all week long, even some 40 dew points pushing down by Wednesday into the deep south, which is, the first cold front that makes it through the south is massive celebration by the folks in the southern part of the United States. And it holds on. We really don't see the humidity climbing up until maybe next Sunday at the earliest. And even next Sunday, we're still holding on to dew points in the 50s. After that, early beginning next week from Monday, we start to see the dew points pushing up back into the 60s for maybe one last warm up of heat humidity. Maybe not the last one, but certainly a warm up for the last week of the month of August. And as far as storms are concerned here, of course, as we take a look at what the GFS is doing, you can see Ernesto on the far right. The front finally makes it to the coast later Monday afternoon and evening. Then we've got this very large dome of high pressure building into the entire eastern half of the United States for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The only place where there might be some rain is down in Florida and maybe in southern Georgia and along the Gulf Coast because the front is going to stall out down there. But it's really going to be a delightful week of weather ahead for the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic states, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and even down into the Deep South. So we'll be definitely looking forward to that. So we'll see you tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, and that's at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Enjoy your Sunday and keep your eyes on the radar for some severe weather later today.